There is a difference between knowing something is coming and standing inside the moment it arrives. You have known this was coming. The days leading up to April 17th, 2026 have carried the quality of a sky that was preparing you for something, stacking the atmosphere with planetary weight, pressing you toward the edge of a threshold you could feel but not yet cross. The anticipation has been real, the pressure has been real. The strange sensation of holding your breath without deciding to has been real. And now today, the moment that all of that was pointing toward has arrived, not as build-up, not as approach, not as the day before something, as the thing itself. The solar eclipse in Aries perfects today, and what that means is not what most people assume when they hear the word eclipse. It does not mean a day of disruption. It does not mean a sky that takes something from you without warning, or breaks the structures of your life as a form of cosmic discipline. What it means is this: a new cycle begins today of a magnitude and a completeness that an ordinary new moon cannot produce. A threshold is crossed, and the self that walks through it is already, in ways both visible and invisible, different from the self that was standing on the other side. This is the day the eclipse speaks, not through warning, not through pressure, through arrival. It arrives in Aries at 27 degrees, in conjunction with Chiron, the wounded healer. The sun and moon meet at this degree, and in that meeting, the light of conscious identity and the pole of emotional instinct align completely, facing the same direction simultaneously, which is what a new moon is, the moment when the light and the body are pointing the same way, when the sun and moon agree. And today they agree in the sign of the self, in the territory of beginning, at the degree where Chiron has been waiting with the patience of someone who knows that healing does not happen on a schedule, but that it does, eventually, happen. Meanwhile, Mercury and Neptune are meeting in the same sign tonight, their conjunction exact at 8:59 in the evening. Mars is moving through a precise sextile to Pluto in Aquarius at 1:55 in the afternoon. Jupiter in Cancer sits across the sky in a square to the moon that creates a productive tension between expansion and the drive toward beginning. Venus remains in Taurus, grounded and steady, holding the frequency of what is genuinely worth building. This is not a quiet day, but it is a day of a particular kind of sound, not the sound of things breaking, the sound of things beginning to speak for the first time, including you. Your soul chose this lifetime with purpose, and your birth chart is the map it left behind. This reading decodes your sun, moon, and rising, dives into love, career, or spiritual path, surfaces karmic patterns, and delivers a month-by-month forecast for 2026 through a personal audio reading and a detailed PDF report sent to your inbox within 48 hours. Just provide your name, date of birth, time of birth, and place of birth at checkout. The link is below. 27 degrees of Aries is not a random location in the zodiac. The Sabian symbol for this degree is the image of a large, disappointed audience. What looks discouraging at first glance is, when understood fully, one of the most liberating instructions the zodiac contains. The audience is disappointed because what appeared on the stage was not what they came to see, not the performance they expected, not the reliable character that had been showing up to meet the room's expectations for as long as anyone could remember. The audience is disappointed because the person on the stage arrived as themselves rather than as the role. And selves, genuine ones, are always somewhat surprising to an audience that has been watching a performance. Today, with the solar eclipse at this degree, the sky marks the beginning of a new cycle of genuine appearance rather than rehearsed presentation. Not a new project or a new opportunity in the first instance, though both may follow. A new relationship between you and the experience of being yourself without the layer of careful management that keeps you comfortable and keeps everyone around you comfortable about you. At 27 degrees, the moon and sun meet exactly, and in that meeting is the seed of everything that will grow across the next 6 months, the next 18 months, the next 19 years of this particular Saros cycle. Eclipse cycles are long. They plant seeds that take years to fully understand. What begins today will not reveal its full shape by the end of the week. But what begins today is real, and it is beginning, and the direction of that beginning is toward the authentic self in its most unfiltered expression. Chiron at this same degree is not incidental. The wounded healer does not appear at the exact point of an eclipse by accident. Chiron's presence means that the new cycle beginning today is not simply about assertion or confidence, or the bold declaration of selfhood. It is rooted in the particular kind of wisdom that only comes from having been genuinely wounded in your experience of being a self in the world, and from choosing, repeatedly across the span of your life, to remain present and honest and functioning in spite of that wound. The eclipse does not begin a new cycle for a person who has never been hurt. It begins a new cycle for a person who has been hurt and who has learned something irreplaceable from the experience. That is the kind of beginning available today, deep, earned, genuinely informed by everything that has already happened. While the eclipse claims the central position in today's sky, another conversation is happening that shapes the quality of how you think and what becomes possible to understand today in ways that will not be available in quite this form tomorrow. Mercury entered Aries 3 days ago. In those 3 days, Mercury has been moving through the early degrees of a sign that operates with fire and speed and the particular courage of someone who trusts their first impression. Mercury in Aries is direct. It reaches its conclusions by moving toward them rather than deliberating around them. And tonight Mercury arrives at the exact degree occupied by Neptune. The conjunction is exact at 8:59 in the evening. Neptune in Aries is a years-long dissolving of the boundaries that have defined the sign of the self. It brings dream quality and spiritual permeability to a sign that would otherwise operate entirely through action and will. When Mercury meets Neptune, the fast-moving mind of fire encounters the slow-dissolving ocean of spirit. This conjunction produces one of two experiences depending on where you are standing within it. For some, Mercury conjunct Neptune in Aries produces confusion. The directness of Aries Mercury gets waterlogged by Neptune's dissolving quality. The crisp thought becomes a fog. If you find today that your thinking feels less precise than usual, that ideas are arriving in images rather than sentences, that the border between what you know and what you are imagining is harder to find than expected, you are experiencing Neptune doing what Neptune does, softening the hard edges of the known so that something larger can move through. This is not a malfunction. For others, this same conjunction produces exactly the opposite. The kind of intuitive understanding that normally exists below the surface of conscious thought suddenly becomes articulable. The thing you have known without knowing how you knew it finds language. The dream becomes translatable. This happens when Mercury's precision lends itself to Neptune's vision rather than tries to override it. When you allow the impressionistic quality of Neptunian knowing to be named before being explained. The Sabian symbol for the degree where Mercury and Neptune meet tonight speaks of a cameo profile showing the outline of a man's head against the full moon. The individual mind held in relation to the larger luminous field. The thinking mind in conversation with something much larger than thought, and the conversation is not an argument, but a collaboration. Distinct and present, but comprehensible only in relation to the larger light. What you understand tonight is larger than what you can fully explain. Let it be. The understanding is real, even when the explanation is incomplete. Amid the eclipse and the Mercury-Neptune conjunction, a third planetary conversation is happening today that carries a different quality entirely. Not the visionary, dissolving quality of Mercury and Neptune. Not the initiatory depth of the eclipse. But the quality of strategic power operating with precise and purposeful intent. Mars in Aries is forming an exact sextile to Pluto in Aquarius at 1:55 in the afternoon. Mars is the planet of drive and the will to act. In Aries, the sign it rules, Mars is operating with maximum natural authority. It is not borrowed fire. It is the source of it. And today, Mars at approximately 3 degrees of Aries reaches the precise angle that creates a sextile with Pluto at 5 degrees of Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius governs the deep structural transformation of collective intelligence, of the networks and systems and collective agreements that determine what is possible at the civilizational level. It is not a personal planet operating on personal territory. It is a force of collective depth working on collective infrastructure. When Mars sextiles Pluto, personal will comes into productive alignment with the deep structural forces of collective transformation. The actions you take today, the choices you make, the directions in which you apply your energy are capable of connecting into something much larger than your individual circumstances. The sextile is an aspect that requires you to choose to use it. It is an invitation, not an imposition. The alignment is available. Whether you step into it depends on whether you are paying attention. What this means practically on eclipse day is this: the new beginning the eclipse initiates does not have to be purely an internal event. It can be anchored in strategic action. The door that Mars and Pluto are holding open together is a door between your personal fire and the larger transformation of the world you are part of. Walking through it does not require a grand gesture. It requires the honest application of your will to the direction your eclipse is pointing you. What are you genuinely willing to do differently starting today? Not what are you excited about in the abstract. What are you willing to move on? That is the Mars-Pluto sextile's actual inquiry, and the eclipse in Aries is the context that makes the answer a genuine beginning rather than another plan that stays inside the planning stage. There is one more planetary conversation active today that deserves honest attention rather than being smoothed over. The Moon, meeting the Sun in Aries at the eclipse degree, is forming a square to Jupiter in Cancer at 1:50 in the afternoon. A square is an aspect of friction, not destructive friction. The kind that generates both heat and traction depending on how you meet it. Jupiter in Cancer has been the sky's great expander of emotional belonging and ancestral nourishment throughout the first half of this year. It enlarges the experience of home, of family, of the deep sense of being genuinely held by something larger than yourself. When the new moon in Aries squares Jupiter in Cancer, you have the eclipse's drive toward new individual beginning in direct tension with Jupiter's expansive pull toward emotional belonging and the deep roots of home. These are not opposed values in the long run. A genuine new beginning rooted in authentic selfhood ultimately serves the quality of your belonging in the world. But in the short run, in the immediate experience of today, the tension between them is real. The square may show up as a conflict between what you feel pulled to begin and what you feel pulled to protect. Between the fire of the new cycle and the warmth of what already exists. If you feel this today, that pull in two directions is not a malfunction. It is the square doing what squares do, generating productive friction that creates real movement rather than the kind that evaporates once inspiration fades. The resolution of a moon square Jupiter on eclipse day is not choosing one side of the tension over the other. It is understanding that the genuine new beginning available today does not require you to abandon what you love in order to become who you are. The expansion that Jupiter in Cancer offers is available to the new self that the eclipse is initiating. The friction is the beginning's way of ensuring that what you start today is not just exciting, but genuinely connected to what you value and who you love. Every sign receives today's eclipse differently depending on which area of life Aries activates in the natal chart. Here is a reading for each of the 12 signs on how the solar eclipse, the Mercury-Neptune conjunction, and the Mars-Pluto sextile are landing today. Aries, this eclipse is happening in your first house, the house of your physical self, your fundamental sense of who you are before you have done or said anything. A solar eclipse in the first house is the rarest and most personal kind of eclipse experience. It is a reset of the self at the most foundational level. The person you have been presenting to the world has been built on a foundation that is now being acknowledged as only partial. The eclipse deepens that foundation. It asks what would remain if you stripped away everything you do in order to be acceptable and let what remains be what you present. Chiron's conjunction here means this beginning carries the full weight of what you have lived. And Mercury, conjunct Neptune in your first house tonight, adds a visionary quality to your self-understanding that will produce insights in the days ahead you did not expect to receive in the form they arrive. Taurus, the eclipse falls in your 12th house, the house of withdrawal, of the things that operate below your conscious awareness. A 12th house eclipse is one of the most interior experiences available. It does not announce itself with dramatic visible events. It moves in the quiet, in the dream life, in what rises to the surface during the uncommitted moments of the day. What the eclipse is initiating is a new cycle of inner knowing. Something that has been below the surface of your understanding for months is beginning to move toward visibility, and the Mercury-Neptune conjunction tonight adds to this. Information you have been receiving at the intuitive level begins to crystallize into something nameable. Venus in your own sign holds you steady through this interior journey. You are not lost in the depths. You are mining them. Gemini, the eclipse opens a new chapter in your 11th house, the house of community, of the people whose vision aligns with yours, of the collective projects and shared purposes that give individual effort its larger context. Your new cycle begins in the space of belonging to something beyond yourself. Not romantic belonging, not family belonging, but the particular belonging that comes from finding others pointed in the same direction. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction in your 11th house tonight produces a visionary quality in how you communicate within your networks. Ideas arriving tonight in conversation or in reflection about your communities carry more depth than they appear to contain on the surface. Write them down. Cancer, the eclipse falls in your 10th house, the house of your public life, your career, your reputation, and the contribution you are here to make at the collective level. A solar eclipse in the 10th house is a public beginning. It marks the start of a new chapter in how you are seen and what you are known for. The Moon square Jupiter tension today is particularly personal for you. You feel the pull between what is being asked of you publicly and what you need to tend privately. Both are real, but the eclipse says the public chapter beginning is rooted in your private depth, not separate from it. What you have lived inwardly is exactly what gives the new public beginning its authority. Leo, the eclipse activates your 9th house, the house of philosophy, of the frameworks through which you understand what is happening in your experience. Your new cycle begins in the realm of belief, of what you hold to be true about the nature of things, of what you are willing to expand your framework to include. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction in your 9th house tonight produces a moment of genuine philosophical insight, something that has been hovering at the edge of your conceptual world without finding an entry point crosses the threshold tonight. The ideas that arrive in the hours around this conjunction, whether through conversation, through reading, or through your own wandering attention, are planting seeds in your belief system that will bear fruit across the next 18 months. Virgo, the eclipse falls in your 8th house, the house of deep transformation, of shared resources, of the intimate bonds through which two lives become genuinely entangled rather than simply adjacent. An eclipse in the 8th house is an initiation into depth, the kind that asks you to be honest about what you actually need from your closest relationships and what you have been performing around those needs in order to avoid the vulnerability of genuine request. Chiron at the eclipse degree is significant for you here, the wound being touched, lives in your experience of being genuinely known by another person. The new cycle invites you to risk being known in a way that you have previously managed through carefully controlled disclosure. The Mars-Pluto sextile supports this. The courage to be genuinely intimate is available today in a form you will not always find. Libra, the eclipse opens a new chapter in your 7th house, the house of significant relationships, of partnership, of the one-to-one bonds that shape the architecture of your life most directly. A solar eclipse in the 7th house is a reset of your relationship to relationship itself. Not necessarily a beginning or an ending of a specific partnership, though either may be part of what this cycle unfolds into. More precisely, it is a reset of what you understand yourself to need from a partnership, what you have been asking too little of yourself and too much of others. What genuine reciprocity looks like for someone at the level of development you have actually reached, not the level you were at when you last set your expectations. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction tonight illuminates the seventh house with a dreaming quality. A conversation or a dream in the days around this conjunction may contain the clearest description yet of what your next partnership chapter is asking you to become. Scorpio, the eclipse falls in your sixth house, the house of daily practice, of work, of the body and its relationship to the routines through which you sustain your functioning. A sixth house eclipse is an initiation into a different kind of discipline, one that feels like relief rather than punishment. The relief of finally being organized around what actually matters rather than what is merely urgent. The new cycle beginning today in your sixth house is asking what your actual daily life will look like if you built it in service of who you are becoming. Chiron in your sixth house says there is a wound in the territory of usefulness, of the feeling that your worth is tied to your output. The eclipse begins a new cycle that has, at its root, the healing of that equation. You are not your productivity. The practices you build from this eclipse forward can be built on a different foundation. Sagittarius, the eclipse activates your fifth house, the house of creative expression, of joy, of the particular experience of life that comes when you are doing what you do because you love it. An eclipse in the fifth house is one of the most genuinely life-giving initiations available because it opens a new chapter in your relationship with your own delight. What have you stopped doing that once made you feel more alive than almost anything else? What form of creative expression have you been rationalizing away? The Mercury-Neptune conjunction in your fifth house tonight opens the creative imagination with a visionary quality. Something you imagine tonight, whether in play or in dream or in the receptive state between waking and sleeping, is worth treating as information about where your creative new beginning is pointing. Capricorn, the eclipse falls in your fourth house, the house of home, of family, of the private interior life that exists beneath whatever public architecture you maintain. A solar eclipse in the fourth house initiates a new chapter in the territory that is most deeply yours, not the territory you perform for the world, the territory where you are simply yourself when no one is watching. Something in your home life, in your family story, in your relationship to the place and the people that constitute your private belonging, is beginning a new cycle today. Chiron at the eclipse degree says this new chapter involves a reckoning with the wounds of home, with the ways the place you came from shaped your sense of what safety looks and feels like. The new cycle does not repeat that pattern. It begins the process of consciously replacing it. Aquarius, the eclipse opens a new chapter in your third house, the house of communication, of the conversations and learning and day exchanges through which you connect with the world around you. A third house eclipse in Aries is a direct and fire-lit new beginning in the realm of your voice. Not your public voice or your strategic voice, but your actual voice, the one that speaks from your first thought rather than your considered second one. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction in your third house tonight adds a particular quality to this. The words that arrive in the hours around this conjunction, especially those that feel more like they were received than generated, are worth capturing. There is a message in tonight's planetary conversation meant specifically for you, and it is likely to arrive in the form of something you find yourself saying that surprises you with its accuracy. Pisces, the eclipse falls in your second house, the house of resources, of money, of the material conditions of your life, and most profoundly, of your sense of your own inherent value. The second house is not only about finance. It is about the felt sense that you are worth tending, worth investing in, worth the effort of building conditions that support your genuine flourishing. A solar eclipse in the second house initiates a new cycle in your relationship to your own worth, not your net worth, your intrinsic worth. The understanding of what you bring to your life and to the lives of others that exists independently of what you produce or earn or achieve. Chiron at the eclipse degree is significant. The wound in the second house for Pisces is often the wound of invisible value, of contributing enormously in ways that are not easily counted and therefore feeling as though they do not quite count. The new cycle beginning today begins to count them. By now you understand the shape of what this day is carrying. The eclipse, the Mercury-Neptune conjunction, the Mars-Pluto sextile, the Moon-square-Jupiter tension. All of these are real, and all of them are operating simultaneously. This is the point at which the information runs out and the navigation begins. So what does April 17th, 2026 actually ask you to do? The first answer is the simplest. It asks you to begin something. Not to plan a beginning or research one or journal about the beginning you intend to make, once conditions are more favorable. To begin. A solar eclipse in Aries at the degree of the disappointed audience is a direct instruction from the sky to stop waiting for the version of your beginning that will be universally received with approval, because that version does not exist and will never exist. The beginning that exists is the one that is genuine, and genuine beginnings always disappoint someone. Let them be disappointed. Begin anyway. The second answer involves the Mercury-Neptune conjunction tonight. It asks you to bring your intuition to bear on the beginning you are making. To let the eclipse's initiation be informed not only by what you consciously know and deliberately intend, but by what you sense, what you dream, what arrives in the unguarded moments of the day, in forms that are more image than argument. The beginning available today is not only a willful act, it is also a visionary one. The will can carry the vision. The vision can direct the will. The third answer addresses the Mars-Pluto sextile specifically. The strategic door this aspect opens today stays open only briefly. What this aspect is asking is that you take one concrete action in the direction your eclipse is pointing. Not a symbolic gesture, a real one. Something that moves energy in the world rather than simply in your intention about the world. The action does not have to be large, it has to be real. That is the Mars-Pluto question, and the eclipse amplifies whatever answer you give it. The fourth answer addresses the Moon-square-Jupiter tension. The friction between your new beginning and what you are afraid to leave behind is not a reason to delay. It is information about what matters to you. The things you feel pulled back toward as you step into the eclipse are telling you what to carry into the new chapter rather than what to leave at the door. The square is not asking you to choose between beginning and belonging. It is asking how your genuine beginning can serve the things you genuinely belong to. Solar eclipses do not complete their work on the day they occur. They plant something, and then they require tending. The tending is quieter than the planting, less dramatic, less charged with the atmospheric electricity you can feel today. But the tending is where the actual growth happens. In the days following April 17th, the intensity will begin to settle. The eclipse corridor starts to close. Mercury moves forward through Aries and eventually crosses into Taurus. The Sun moves toward the final degrees of Aries before crossing into Taurus on April 19th, marking the formal end of Aries season. Mars continues through its home sign with increasing directness. What remains after all of that movement settles is not an absence of what today contained. It is a distillation of it. The seed the eclipse planted will begin to put out its first shoots in ways that are subtle and may not look like what you expected. New cycles never do. The beginning you are aware of today may not be the beginning that turns out to matter most. Eclipses frequently initiate changes that are not recognizable as changes in the first days after the peak. They work on the long timeline of the Saros cycle they belong to. They are patient with the slowness of human integration in ways that the sky's faster-moving bodies are not. This means your task in the days immediately following today is not to evaluate whether the eclipse worked. That evaluation is premature and will produce inaccurate results. Your task is to hold the intention of the beginning you are making and to continue applying your energy in that direction, even as the electric charge of today's sky settles into ordinary April atmosphere. The ordinary April that follows this eclipse is not the same as the ordinary April that preceded it. It just does not announce the difference as loudly. The difference is operating in you, in the adjustments your inner landscape has made, and those adjustments will become visible in the weeks and months ahead. The integration of a solar eclipse takes as long as it takes and cannot be rushed into premature completion. What can be done in the days following is to remain honest, to remain present, to continue applying wheel energy in the direction the eclipse is pointing without requiring the results to appear faster than the cycle is designed to produce them. The seed is in the ground. Water it. Give it light. Stop digging it up every 3 days to check whether it has sprouted. It has. It is doing so in the dark, which is where all genuine beginnings spend their early days. If you've been waiting for a day that feels like the beginning of something real, something that is genuinely yours rather than a continuation of patterns and arrangements that were never quite aligned with who you actually are, this is that day. April 17th, 2026 is not a day that promises easy outcomes or comfortable transitions. It is a day that offers a real beginning. And real beginnings have never been comfortable because they require the genuine self to show up in circumstances that have been arranged for a different version of you. The solar eclipse in Aries at 27 degrees conjunct Chiron is initiating a new cycle rooted in the wisdom of everything you have carried and everything you have survived. The Mercury-Neptune conjunction tonight is opening a window into the intuitive dimensions of your understanding, the parts of you that know more than your conscious reasoning can account for. The Mars-Pluto sextile is holding a strategic door open and asking you to walk through it with real action rather than passive intention. The Moon's square Jupiter tension is pressing you to understand that your new beginning is not a departure from what you love, but a deepening of your capacity to serve it. All of this is available today, not on the next full moon, not when the energy feels more settled, not when you are more ready, which is another way of saying not until you are less afraid. Today, under a sky that has been preparing this exact configuration for longer than any single translating planet has been in its current sign. The eclipse begins with you because an eclipse in Aries cannot begin anywhere else. The self is the first principle of this sign. Not the self as a performance, not the self as a strategy, the self as the original impulse, the one that existed before it learned to make itself smaller and more convenient for the world it arrived in. That self is beginning a new chapter today. The first page is already written. You wrote it in the days of pressure that led to this moment. You wrote it in everything you have lived that Chiron is now holding at the eclipse degree as testimony to what you have survived and what you have learned. You wrote it in the quiet visionary hours that Mercury and Neptune are making available tonight. The story has already begun. What you decide to do with today is simply deciding whether you are going to read it or write it. The eclipse in Aries has an opinion about which one you should choose. And that opinion is direct, unambiguous, and fire-lit in the way that only the first sign of the zodiac can produce. Begin.